and a guy named Jeff Rayner, who spoke to me and said, "I can change your image."
That page captures an early version of her story before branding.
Meghan Markle's father is now claiming he holds evidence that challenges what the public has long accepted as fact about her age. And this time he insists it isn't rumor, speculation, or personal opinion. According to him, it's printed history, a physical record that has existed in plain sight for nearly 3 decades. If his claim is accurate, Meghan Markle may be several years older than she has publicly stated. And that single discrepancy, if true, would ripple through nearly every chapter of her carefully curated narrative.
I we're looking for was here last week.
Yeah, he's our age, blonde hair, blue eyes.
Cute with a great smile?
Yeah, you know him.
If his name's Lucky, I know him.
The fairy tale romance begins to look calculated. The Hollywood ascent appears less organic. Even the timelines surrounding her most public milestones, including her pregnancy, invite renewed scrutiny. So what else might not align with the official story? And why would a father risk public condemnation to bring this forward now?
And a guy named Jeff Rayner, who spoke to me and said, "I can change your..."
According to Thomas Markle, the answer lies in a forgotten page of a 1997 issue of 17 magazine. Not an expose, not an interview, but a simple casting directory. A list of young actresses attempting to break into the industry. Hundreds of names, brief descriptions, ages supplied directly by the talent or their representatives. Most entries are unremarkable, until one stands out. There, in black and white, is the name Meghan Markle, listed clearly as 21 years old. Not 15, not 16, not even 18, 21. This was not a blog post or an anonymous website. It was a nationally distributed print magazine with editorial oversight, legal review, and fact-checking standards. Tens of thousands of copies were printed, sold on newsstands, and archived. Nearly 30 years later, that page still exists, and the age printed next to her name has never changed. What gives this detail weight is timing. In 1997, Meghan Markle was not famous. She had no public image to protect, no global brand to maintain, no incentive to manipulate her age for press advantage. Casting directories relied on information provided directly by actors or their agents, because inaccuracies could lead to legal issues or professional fallout. Accidentally aging a teenager by 6 years would have been a serious error, and one that editors would not casually allow, unless that age was exactly what was submitted. That page captures Meghan Markle before narrative control, before brand management, before global attention. It shows a version of her biography untouched by later reinvention, and it does not align with the timeline the public has been given for years. If she were truly 21 in 1997, basic arithmetic places her birth year around 1975 or 1976, not 1981. A 6-year difference is not trivial. It alters how her entire career trajectory is interpreted. Consider her first credited television appearances in the early 2000s. The official narrative frames her as a young actress just beginning her ascent. But under the earlier birth year, she would have been approaching her late 20s, an age when many actors have already spent years facing rejection, burnout, and stalled momentum. The image of a rapid rise begins to fracture. The magazine entry does not stand alone. Thomas Markle has described the same timeline consistently for years. He recalls her high school years extending into the late 1990s. He remembers stage performances in 1997. School programs, rehearsal schedules, acceptance letters, production flyers, moments tied to specific academic calendars. These are not vague recollections. They are anchored to documents, dates, and routines. And Thomas Markle spent decades working in television production. He understands how ages are adjusted, how images are shaped, how narratives are softened for public consumption. When he says the public timeline does not match what he lived, he is not speculating. He is pointing to inconsistencies with professional certainty. The official biography states that Meghan graduated high school in 1999 at age 18. But Thomas Markle's records suggest a 1998 graduation. Under the accepted birth year, that would imply finishing high school at 16, without any documented acceleration, early graduation program, or academic exception. A 1975 or 1976 birth year resolves these discrepancies cleanly. The school years align. The performances make sense. The magazine entry fits naturally. Only one timeline functions without forcing explanations. The other requires overlooking printed records, personal documentation, and basic math. So why has Hollywood, or the palace, never addressed this? Because in Hollywood, age is currency. A 21-year-old actress is perceived radically differently from a 27-year-old, even with identical talent. Youth is marketed, protected, and quietly manipulated. Studios chase it, agents defend it. Careers are built or stalled on it. And here's the irony. Meghan Markle herself has spoken openly about Hollywood's obsession with age. In a 2015 interview, she discussed how women are treated as if they have expiration dates, describing the pressure actresses face to hide or minimize their age. She said she was 33 at the time and comfortable with it, adding that anyone bothered by her age had the problem, not her. She framed her stance as defiant, honest, empowering. But critics argue that if her real age was already older than publicly acknowledged, those statements take on a different tone. Less transparency, more preemption. What sounds like openness could instead be a strategic redirection, addressing age pressure publicly while quietly adjusting the timeline behind the scenes to avoid deeper scrutiny. Age matters because it shapes opportunity. When Suits premiered in 2011, Meghan was presented as 30 years old. If she were actually several years older, that distinction matters. Long-running television shows often cast romantic leads who can plausibly play younger and age into the role. Casting an unknown actress in her mid to late 30s opposite younger male leads is far less common, not because of ability, but because of perception. Subtracting years would not be vanity. It would be survival in an industry that quietly sidelines women as they age. And that same logic extends beyond her career, into how her personal story has been framed. When Meghan Markle met Prince Harry in 2016, the public narrative presented her as being in her mid-30s. Accomplished, self-assured, worldly, yet still youthful. To many supporters, that framing felt accurate and even aspirational. She was portrayed as a woman who had lived, learned, and arrived at love with clarity rather than desperation. But skeptics argue that if her actual age were several years older, early 40s rather than mid-30s, the same story would be interpreted very differently. Age changes how motivation, urgency, and timing are perceived. A romance that feels spontaneous and organic at 36 can feel strategic at 42, especially when paired with a career that may already be facing its natural slowing point in Hollywood. Context reshapes everything. A first marriage can look like exploration at one age and a recalibration at another. Speaking on global stages such as the United Nations can be read as the rise of a young activist, or as a deliberate push to secure relevance before doors begin to close. From this perspective, critics don't see a single disputed detail. They see a pattern in which adjusting age reframes an entire public identity to better align with Hollywood expectations first and royal optics later. Whether that interpretation is fair depends entirely on which timeline one believes. But the scrutiny has not remained confined to her biography alone. It has spilled into other parts of the Sussex narrative, most notably the account of childbirth described by Prince Harry himself. In his memoir, Spare, Harry offered an intimate and emotional description of the birth of their son, Archie. Many readers initially accepted the account without question, assuming any unfamiliar details were simply the result of a deeply personal experience being retold from memory. However, for readers familiar with hospital procedures, certain elements stood out as unusual. Harry described a calm, almost spa-like environment, Meghan using a birthing ball, controlled breathing, a sense of serenity. None of that is extraordinary on its own. What drew attention was his statement that Meghan received an epidural twice. From a medical standpoint, epidurals are not administered twice in that way. The catheter is placed once, and medication is adjusted through the same line. Describing it as being given twice may reflect a misunderstanding, but it immediately raised questions about the accuracy of the details. More scrutiny followed when Harry described the timeline after the birth. He wrote that they left the Portland hospital roughly 2 hours after delivery and drove nearly an hour back to Frogmore Cottage. That detail struck many readers as highly unusual. Even in uncomplicated births, observation periods typically extend far longer than 2 hours. Private hospitals, especially those catering to high-profile patients, are known for being cautious, not rushed. Discharging a new mother and newborn so quickly runs counter to standard practice. The concern deepened when Harry mentioned that Meghan experienced high blood pressure during pregnancy. That detail is medically significant. High blood pressure can indicate serious complications and usually triggers increased monitoring both before and after delivery. Patients with elevated blood pressure are often kept under close observation, sometimes with restricted mobility, particularly in the hours following birth. That reality does not align easily with leaving a hospital shortly after delivery and sitting through a long car ride home. None of these inconsistencies prove intentional deception. It is entirely possible that Harry misunderstood medical terminology compress the timeline in his retelling, or describe the experience emotionally rather than clinically. Memory is imperfect, especially during moments of stress and joy. However, when multiple elements conflict with standard medical protocols, questions naturally arise. Hospitals operate on procedures, not narrative flexibility. Those protocols exist to protect both patients and institutions. Early discharge, especially in cases involving blood pressure concerns, would present elevated risks. That is why readers with medical backgrounds have struggled to reconcile Harry's account in Spare with how childbirth is typically handled. The issue is not a single phrase or isolated error. It is the overall picture that feels misaligned. When a story is presented as factual but contains details that clash with established medical practice, skepticism follows. That does not automatically imply dishonesty. It may point to misunderstanding, oversimplification, or selective storytelling. But the result remains the same. Parts of the account do not fully add up. Age becomes relevant again at this point. If Meghan Markle were several years older than publicly stated, that shift would not make pregnancy impossible, but it would alter expectations. Fertility monitoring, intervention rates, and delivery risks all increase with age, particularly after 40. Low intervention birth narratives become statistically less common. Once high blood pressure enters the equation, doctors do not rely on atmosphere or intention. They follow protocols. And when those protocols appear absent from the public story, people begin asking what may have been simplified, misunderstood, or omitted. The idea of a low-intervention birth followed by a rapid hospital discharge does not align with how higher-risk pregnancies are normally managed. Leaving within 2 hours and driving nearly an hour home is especially uncommon when age and blood pressure are both factors. The most dangerous window often comes after delivery, which is precisely why hospitals monitor mothers and newborns closely during that period. This is not about criticizing older mothers. Women give birth in their 40s every day, often safely and with excellent medical care. The question is not whether it is possible. The question is whether the public narrative makes sense as presented. If Meghan Markle were older than claimed, a smooth conception, minimal intervention, and immediate discharge would represent a sequence of unusually low probability outcomes. And when questions about age, timelines, and medical details intersect, skepticism compounds rather than dissipates. At this point, it is no longer just one disputed detail. Multiple unrelated elements appear to point in the same direction, toward a story that may be more carefully shaped than fully disclosed. What makes this story persist is not a single accusation, but convergence. You have a father speaking from lived experience. You have a decades-old magazine with no incentive to reshape today's narrative. And you have medical professionals responding based on established protocols. These sources are not connected. They are not coordinated, and none of them benefit from agreeing with one another. What keeps the discussion alive is not outrage, it is silence. Neither the palace nor Meghan Markle has directly addressed the conflicting records in the way ordinary situations typically demand. In most cases, documentation resolves questions quickly. When it does not, public curiosity shifts. People stop asking whether something might be wrong and begin asking why it was never clarified. When silence feels safer than clarity, it often suggests that the full explanation is more complicated than expected. Whether the age printed decades ago was accurate or not, one fact remains undeniable. It was published long before fame, influence, or royal association entered the picture. Physical copies still exist. They cannot be quietly edited or retroactively reframed. That alone gives the detail weight. Another layer comes from medical professionals responding to the publicly shared birth narrative. Doctors and nurses do not approach such accounts emotionally. They evaluate them through procedure, liability, and risk management. When they say certain details would not normally occur in a reputable hospital, especially for high-profile patients, they are describing standard practice, not speculation. Each source can be challenged individually. A parent could be accused of bias. A magazine listing could be dismissed as an editorial mistake. Medical commentary could be waved away as outsiders misunderstanding a unique situation. But the issue is that all three point toward the same set of questions: timing, age, and medical plausibility. To dismiss them all, one must believe that unrelated sources misinterpreted the same facts in the same way, independently. That is what gives the pattern its strength. The magazine aligns with the family timeline. The medical concerns explain why age would matter. Family memories provide context for why a printed detail would not be random. None of this proves anything on its own, but together it reframes the discussion. The question becomes not whether one person is mistaken, But which explanation requires fewer assumptions? That leads to a larger, more uncomfortable question. Why has this never been clearly addressed? The British monarchy has survived controversy for centuries by adapting and managing perception. But an unresolved discrepancy tied to Meghan Markle presents a unique institutional problem. Admitting a significant oversight would reflect on the system itself. Royal marriages involve extensive background checks. Missing something so basic would suggest failure. Knowing and remaining silent would suggest something else entirely. Neither option is easy for an institution built on continuity, trust, and precision. What ensures this story does not fade is that the evidence is not controllable. The magazine still exists. Medical professionals continue to question the public account. Thomas Markle continues to speak. Silence may slow attention, but it does not end curiosity. Stories like this do not disappear, they wait. And when enough people notice the same fractures, the official version begins to feel less settled. If one key detail was ever incorrect, it naturally leads to broader questions about what else deserves a closer look, including how history is recorded around Archie and Lilibet. Thomas Markle claims he has photographs, school records, and ticket stubs that do not align with the publicly presented timeline. Why has none of this been fully released? Why has clarification never been offered when it could have ended speculation years ago? That is where the conversation now stands. What do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if you want more deep dives into stories others avoid. And click the next video on your screen to continue the discussion.